One of the other things there seems to be misunderstanding on is the vote to terminate.
Okay.
They feel they should have voted before the vote to terminate on whether we should terminate. And I tried to explain, this is their chance to vote. Nobody was removed. She was suspended to protect the association, so nothing would happen with any association stop. And then the board voted. The board voted, a very close vote, 4-5. The vote was not to terminate, and everybody respected that vote. So to me, it was done correctly. I don't see how you can have a meeting. How does the board have a meeting of the board without noticing the fact that you're going to do the termination thing? It seems like a circle.
Well, I think the easiest thing to address is these 9 board members cannot, and this is where I would get involved, cannot get together and decide what they're going to do at a board meeting without there being without it being at a meeting. So, no. So the board cannot decide to take action without it being at a meeting. So,
How did the suspension take place?
Yeah.
this is going forward. So the issue of whether there should be a pre-meeting for termination, the best issue with that is that's the fun of meeting style government by board, which is
how they can get together.
if you had a meeting and the board voted to make a decision to terminate, that would have been in and of itself the decision whether to terminate. Theoretically, you could have had a board decision whether to suspend and look at termination down the road, but the question that was framed to me about why you would do a suspension without a vote comes back to, do you have authority to remove an employee before giving them notice that you plan 5 days from then to have a termination? That's a board decision whether they want to pursue that or not. But in terms of legality of having a pre-meeting meeting, that means one of two things. You're either meeting outside of a properly noticed meeting, which is a big no-no, or you're having a meeting to terminate, which you're going to be noticing the 5 days anyways. And if you say, look, firing a manager is a big deal, we want 5 days notice to do it, that's a decision for the board to decide going forward whether they want to do that or whether they want to have the suspension.
Mr. Broom, was she given a reason?
No.
I don't know that answer, but I will say what was presented to me is termination without cause, and that's the paperwork that I prepared because technically the contract does not require cause. Her contract with the association is with or without cause, and that the manager gets 60 days pay either way.
But the contract is not about suspension.
Their suspension is not explicitly in there.
Who asked the mayors to be here at our last
No
meeting?
one other than those 2 people on the board were even consulted.
Yeah.
The rest of them were not even asked individually how you feel about it.
Well, that would be a violation to have them all ask. I mean, if you're asking me, board members should not be meeting as the 9 of them. Well, that's between them if they want to talk about it.
Okay, so we were on, which board member were we on? We were on
Mayor's here.
Mr. Rogers? Mr. Rogers, we were done? We were done?
Who let him in?
Oh, they just did Mr. Singer. Mr. Singer, that was Mr. Singer's question, yes. Okay, so, so we'll come back to the board for one final round, then anything else from any other board members? Anything else from any of the board members? I'm going to round it up for the board members, and then if we have time, we're going to go to the audience. So again, we're going to find out here for the board members.
That's what we'd like.
Did you have any follow-up?
Up with the board meeting.
Anything you wanted? Nothing? Mr. Fisher, I think, wanted something. Mr. Fisher?
I'd like to know why this board will not have evening meetings so we can get other people that have to work to come to these meetings also.
Yeah,
I don't think
agree.
that's an attorney question. That's a board decision. Correct?
Yeah, I don't, as I said, I don't set your meetings. I come when you guys ask me to be here. I know your annual meeting's on a Saturday, so.
That's it for, was there anything else from board? Do I have anything else?
I'll take up the money if it's for our lawyer.
Oh, this could probably use some clarification. At one of the board meetings, on an emergency basis, one of the board members, they wanted to have, basically a majority of the quorum there limit board members' powers and duties that are otherwise outlined in the documents and or bylaws. I was chairing that meeting and I called it out of order, being that the board can't limit other board members' powers or change the bylaws or the statute. And I was yelled and screamed at that I couldn't do that. So my question, I guess, is that can the board, the quorum of whoever happens to be at the board, vote to limit board members' power, other people's power?
Okay, well, first, the easy answer is the board should be limited to the scope of what's on an agenda. So that's always the easy one. The second issue is in terms of what powers you can and cannot modify, you do have bylaws that delineate powers. And as we went over, your declarations and your bylaws can only be amended by a univoter vote, whether it be in writing, by or if you actually were to somehow get a majority together in a room and vote to amend them. It's not quite that explicit, which would be if there's the duties contain a broadness, you could have a discussion about what does this mean. But yes, if you were to say, okay, we're voting to take, say, for example, the easy one, treasurer and secretary. Secretary and treasurer have delineated roles. The treasurer is the one who handles money. You could not, I would say, you're violating the bylaws if you had a meeting where you said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give all of the treasurer's control over money to the secretary. That's a problem. Okay, so that would come down to what are you trying to do. If you're trying to say, hey, the secretary, in addition to the authority under the bylaws, we're going to have a delegation that the secretary is going to oversee, say, the clerk-owned gazette. You can do that. The issue, what it would come down to is what you're doing with their authority going to violate the bylaws. And that would be the only issue.
Okay, so what we'll do here for the last, whatever that is, 12 minutes?
I have a question on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. We've had a committee for I don't know how many months that was going over our bylaws. That my understanding is when they got done with that, they were going to bring the form, the new bylaws, as they rewrote it, to come to the board to get it approved, to go to our lawyer. And you were going to look it over and make sure it's legally. And I know we have to come back and have a vote for the homeowners. Mm-hmm. And it has to be approved by, what, 51% of the homeowners?
As I sit here, I think so. You guys, I think, are 51%. It might be 60.
I think it actually depends on the vote of the board. If it's unanimous, that's it. If it's not unanimous, then it's 75%.
It's whatever your bylaws and declarations say.
Okay, so for the next 11
It hasn't
minutes.
happened in probably 12 years that you've had a unit owner meeting, so we haven't.
Okay, so for the next
So-
11 minutes, we're going to see if we can field what's ever left for questions from the unit owners
Well, I
here.
just want to make sure to address to
Okay.
answer your question. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
What about?
In the hat in the back.
They're already up there, get it written.
What?
In the hat in the back, go. Yeah.
I have two questions for you. Number one is, we're talking about the authority that the board directors have. The board directors, to my understanding, have no power whatsoever except for deciding what's to be done for the association as a group of a forum of the board. Number one. Number two, the president then relays that to the manager to do her duties and move forward. Does the president have the right at any time to delegate authority to the manager without a quorum of the board deciding what's to be done?
Okay, so there's a few things going on in there. Number one, typically, yes, board members have no inherent power other than sitting here. Officers are a different question. Officers do have certain administrative day-to-day tasks. The president obviously being the most powerful because of the administrative oversight. But for example, the treasurer has certain obligations regarding oversight of finance and things that goes on.
Disregarding the president, what is the authority they have as far as delegating for which manager can make decisions on?
Okay, delegation of
Without board
authority. Delegation of authority is normally something that would be done by the board. However, informally, like we talked about a minute ago, the secretary could ask, say, the manager to send out notice of a meeting. When you're talking about delegation of authority, it always is going to come back to, is this something that statutorily or by declarations resides in the board as the association? If that answer is yes, then it has to be a board decision. If by declarations or statute or by bylaw, there has already been, or by even if you guys have had a resolution before by the board, there has been already a delegation of that authority to an officer that has some day-to-day control, then that officer can exercise that delegation without it bringing back to the board whether they can use a power that's already given to them. Okay, so as I said, there have been numerous powers that have been delegated to your manager. My firm, we deal with Deidre on a pretty regular basis, dealing with a lot of things, like collections is an easy example. You have a resolution that was passed with an explicit delegation of authority. So to answer to say, hey, is this day-to-day task something an officer can delegate? I would tell you first, have we delegated it before? Okay, or is it delegated in the bylaws? Then we would address, is it outside that list? Does that answer your question?
Okay, next over here in the black with the hand. We'll just move from the back to the front. You go.
I just have a point of clarification, please. Notice the 5 days. There's some confusion as to that 5 days, whether it's business days or whether it's a notice that includes the calendar days. And if you give a notice on Friday, does that end of that day, the first day being Saturday, the second day being Sunday, go on down the line, or does Friday count as a separate day to start with Friday, the day given? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's very. I'm trying. If you might have silence on that issue of whether it's business or calendars, and there's a default rule as to whether it's business or calendar. And I want to say, and I'll preface this with I don't have it sitting in front of me, but I would say it can be calendar, but. If there's a document that says you guys have to do it by business, that could be accurate. But as I sit here, I would say that's in whatever the documents, but my understanding is it's calendar.
So if you noticed it on Friday at 10 a.m., when would the meeting be held?
Okay.
Saturday, Sunday, what do we do? Like Wednesday?
Okay, here in white.
That's why we're looking up.
Lady just asked me another question. Can you tell me why, when the board wants to get up and we have something to say, why they won't answer a question, they just shoot you right down and that's it? They do not answer any questions at an open board meeting.
Well, that would be based on whatever your procedures are for the agenda of a meeting. Most meetings would have an agenda that says this is public question and comment. When that period is either open or closed is when you would do it. I mean, again, I'm going off of experience with associations and local governments, because otherwise you'd end up with 100 people shouting things and you have no clear minutes.
No, it's a person will stand up. They don't say this, so you just stand up just like I have my hand up. And then when I go to ask a question, he just goes to the other side of the room. For another.
The easy thing to tell you is whoever's running the meeting has almost total discretion under rules of
And
order.
there you go, right there.
Well, that's
If I
not a
could-
legal question. That's a.
If I could clarify that, almost 20 years ago, an attorney, I believe it was Beckman Polikoff, drafted a resolution that was passed by the board that the board meetings would be to the board first. They'd take care of their discussion. Then it would go to unit owner discussion, unit owner statements. Then it would come back to the board, so any board member may answer any of those items. But nobody can make a board member answer an item. And that's how we've been doing it.
Asked a question, you just automatically, you didn't give any of the board a chance to answer, you just went to the next person.
Apparently you didn't hear what I said.
I heard
It goes to the board, then all the unit owners as a whole
Yeah.
get to make their statements or questions. Then, when they're all done, it comes back to the board, and some members at that point have answered questions to the best of their ability. And then we vote.
You go right to the next person.
Again,
Don't
if
tell me.
you still don't quite understand this. Okay.
Let me try to synthesize. It sounds like, and this might help a lot of you. It sounds like you have a lot of issues with the way your procedures function. The board has the authority to simplify that, but if it's existing on the date you come in here, until you amend the rules of procedure, and again, I'm not commenting on what they are or anything like that. I'm saying if the rules of procedure are X, Y, Z, those are the rules of procedure until they're amended. And so I would suggest if there is consternation about the way the rules of procedure are, you can amend it. The board can do that at any time. They can vote to amend the rules of procedure.
I mean, we weren't asking them to do a Rubik's Cube. We're asking them a question question and you automatically, as soon as I finish talking, you go right over to someone else so they can ask a question and they still don't get an answer.
You've asked your question. He's answered the best of my mouth. I've answered the best I can do.
I'm not talking.
We're moving over here so we can get stuff in the last 4 minutes. Go ahead.
I just got 3 simple questions. Is this an official?
Quiet, people.
I'm sorry, what?
Is this an official board meeting?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay. If it's an official board meeting, and board members put something out there to be put on the next agenda today?
That would actually depend on, I come back to your procedural guidelines for what you
No,
can
it's not on
add.
our agenda today, so no, we couldn't do it.
No, I
Could
think the
they
question,
ask to have something put on the agenda for the next meeting at this meeting?
No, they can ask the president if they want to ask the president at some point. President sets the agenda. Question number 3.
Can they ask for it to be put on today, on record?
It would not, no, the board can't vote on that, no.
No, I didn't ask that. I asked if they could